Hi. So first of all, welcome to this talk about A/B testing. As you can see, for a long time now. So I'm sahil-dua. I work at Booking.com as a graduate software developer, and I love open source. So that's why I've contributed to a lot of projects by Google, by GitHub, and also Pandas library, which is a Python library for data analysis. And currently I'm an open source community leader at DuckDuckGo. And so first of all, before I start with the main topic of this talk, which is A/B testing, of course, I want you to think about one thing. What assumptions are you making about the performance of your product? What are the assumptions that you're making that you think when you think that you have a great idea and it's going to work? I want you to think of at least one moment when you thought it's going to work, it was a great idea, but it didn't really work out well. So the thing is, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. It may look like a bold statement as of now, but I will prove it in a while. And so I want to give you a way to measure your changes, to measure what impact that your new features, your changes have on your customer base. Maybe your visitors, your users, or your actual customers who purchase or buy something from your platform. So, what is A/B testing? A/B testing is just conducting experiments to optimize the customer experience. And what that means is, let's say you have two versions of the website. As you can see, the call to action button is blue in the first one, the base variation, which is like an A variation. And if you want to change it to green, let's call it variation B. So what you do is, now you have two versions of your website, of your product. What you do is, you divide your customer base into two parts. And what that means is, you have two things to check. You have to know that which one is better. And what you do is, you pick up two people and one each variation, and you see how they react. But that's going to be really opinionated, that's going to be really biased. So how do you make sure that what you actually test is not biased? So what you do is, you divide your entire users, entire customer base into two parts, make them see the different versions, and then you see how they behave, how they act, how they interact with other customers, or how they make purchases, or whatever your product is. So that is fine, that you know, like on a high level introduction, that what is A/B testing, but how, like why do you need A/B testing? Do you have any reason? So let's talk about that. First reason is, A/B testing ensures that your customers decide what actually stays on your website. So what that means is, let's say you have a great idea and you want to implement it, but you can't just implement everything that you have in your mind. You have to check how your customers like it, whether they like it or not, and how they interact with that new feature. So they get to decide, your customers get to decide whether they like it or not, and whether you can keep it or not. So it gives you a really powerful way to actually see what your customers want. Next is, it's easy to measure the impact on your business. Your business may be any platform, e-commerce website, from which you want to make as many purchases so that you can earn money. You can test how your new feature is having impact on your conversion, on your profits, on your business. Or you may even have a social network, and where you want to see how people are interacting, how much they are interacting, how much they are posting stuff, and how much they are interacting with other users. Next is, as I already said, it's not based on your opinions or assumptions. Because if you have a team of 5, everyone is going to have different opinions. How do you decide what exactly goes live? You do A/B testing. You do A/B testing on the ideas that you have, and you see how much people like it, or whether they like it at all or not. And that's how you decide what stays, and hence it's totally independent of anyone's assumptions or opinions. Next is, it cuts down on functionality bloat. And what that means is, let's say you have a team of 5 again, and everyone has great ideas, but you don't really put up all the features on your website, because that's going to make it clutchy. So what you do is you test the features one by one and see what stays. And there are always going to be some other things which customers don't like, and you remove them. And hence it makes sure that you keep only those features which are actually useful for you as a business and for your customers as users of your product. And next is general product deployment is really easy, because when you roll out a new feature, there may be some bugs, right? There may be some errors, there may be some warnings which are holding yourself back. So you don't really need to care about something is going to be wrong, because once you roll it out, once you start an A/B test, you can always switch it off if there is something wrong. So it provides you flexibility of rolling your features out and testing, and if it doesn't go good, doesn't look good, or give some error, you can always switch it back. So it makes this process really easy. And finally, to learn. This is a really huge power you have. So you can learn about your customers. You can learn about your users, about your visitors. And to quote Stephen Levitt, the key to learning is feedback, and it's nearly impossible to learn anything without feedback. So what you want to do is you want to have some ideas, put that thing live, and see what feedback your customers give, and how they're going to give feedback is not by surveys. You're not going to send them surveys like whether you like it or not. It's going to be on the base of how much their behavior changes with that new feature or with those changes. So you really have to consider that feedback that you get in terms of behavior and make changes accordingly, and then put something live again, get feedback, and repeat. So to summarize, why do we need A/B testing, or why is it helpful? Your customers get to decide what stays. It's easy to measure the impact of your changes on the business. It's not dependent on your or anyone's opinions or assumptions. It cuts down a functionality bloat and helps you keep only those things which really matter for you and your customers. General deployment becomes easy, and finally to learn from your customers. It's really powerful when you actually can learn someone without even knowing them. So now that you know why A/B testing is useful, or why you should test your product, let's talk about what all features, what all things you can A/B test. And the answer is absolutely anything. You can really test anything that you want on your website, on your product, on your app, or anything that you have. But let's take some examples. Let's take some specific examples and see, like just as an example, see what are the things that you can test on different kinds of products that you may have. Let's say you have a website. You may have some call to action buttons. You can change those. Or you may also have some content. Like let's say you say on your website something about your service, something about your product, and you can change that. You can also change the copy. So let's say you say, "Hi Sahil, this is a great day." You can also change it to something like, "Let's do this," or you can just change the copy and see how it actually affects the behavior of people when they read it. It may also be media. It's really powerful. So you can also A/B test different images. You can test what images actually work well. So you can test on, like, if you have a home page, what actually works, what is better for your customers. You can show two pictures and see which one is performing better. You may also change the navigation and to see that how it affects how people interact or how people navigate on your product, on your website. And you may also change the personalization, which is like you may recommend something, you may change the algorithms behind the recommendations and see how people react to that. You may also have a social network. You may change the social icon, you may change the profile images, you can change how profile image looks like, you can change the layout of the profile, your feed, or anything like that. You may also change the social ads. You can change the algorithms behind the social ads so as to check how much people are actually interacting with that, how much people are getting engaged with those ads. And yeah, social messaging. It's really powerful because if you have a social network, it's most probably going to be how people interact with each other. And if you can change that, you can change something like how replies look like, or how your message thread looks like, and that's definitely going to change the behavior of the people when they interact with others. So you can test that and see what actually works for you, and not just for like in general what works, and you keep putting it. You may also have, like, let's say you want to test emails. You can change from name, you can change greeting, or you can also change the subject. And we know that these are the things which actually matter when we decide how many people are actually going to open the email. You can change those, and you can measure how much open rate you're getting with different types of, let's say, subjects, and you can decide accordingly whichever works better for you and for your customers. You can also change personalization and images, because that is something that's going to impact how much they click on your links, or how much they get engaged with what content you're mailing them. You can also just test and see whichever works for you. And you can also change the optimal time. This is not a technical thing, but you can see that it actually impacts. So if you send an email, let's say in the morning, you may try sending it in the afternoon or in the evening to see if that actually changes the behavior. And if it doesn't, you always have a switch back, as I talked about it earlier. If you have a mobile app, you may change the navigation, and again, to see how people navigate within the app. You may change the display, or maybe push notifications. You can change the push notification text and see how the open rate of those notifications, or click rate of notifications, is getting affected. Or you can also change the deep linking to see how people are going from coming to your app from one other app, or maybe some website. So, in short, A/B testing is a tool which provides you data so that you can make accurate decisions. Now that we know why we should do A/B testing and what are the things that you can test, let's talk about the process. Let's talk about how you can do it, how you can do A/B testing on your product. And there's no one defined process, but there's one process that I'm going to talk about, which is like, I have 5 steps. So first of all, you do observe a problem, you write hypotheses about it, you brainstorm solutions to fix the problem, run the experiment, and then make a decision based on the data. Let's talk about these steps in a bit detail. So the first step is you want to observe a problem. How do you do it? So you should have either qualitative data or quantitative data to make a decision about what is the problem. And how that helps is, qualitative data tells you what you can test. It provides you data, it provides you indication that there is something going wrong, or there is a scope of improvement, and what exactly you can test. While the quantitative data gives you where exactly to test. Where can you get the qualitative data? You can get it from maybe user testing. You may conduct surveys on your product, and you may get to know what is the thing that people like and people don't like. You may also have heat maps which tell you some information about how exactly users are scrolling, let's say, or clicking on your website or app. You may also have customer-facing teams which actually interact with the customers and get feedback from them, and you can know what exactly you can improve, where is the improvement scope. Quantitative data can come from web traffic, email marketing, or you may have customer support tickets which may tell you like where there is a scope of improvement, and also you may have look at the purchase history, or it can be interaction history on your platform, on your app, whatever product you have. So next step is, once you have realized the problem, the next step is write a hypothesis. And what that means is, you start like this. You use the term based on the data. It may be collected from anywhere. Based on the data, we realize that, let's say for example, users are not able to interact with other users properly. So this is the problem that you identify based on the data. And the next step should be, we believe that by changing X, changing something, we will improve the experience of users when they interact with others. But this is not enough. So you mentioned the problem, you gave a solution, but how are you going to measure it? That's also important. So you have to also define what's the metric that you're going to measure so that you can actually make a decision whether that problem was solved or not. You may look at, let's say, we're talking about interaction, like you may talk about the reply rate, like let's say how people interact with others in the messages or using emails or whatever. You can check the reply rate, you can check how many messages are sent, how many users actually interact per day or something like that. So you have to give at least one metric so that you have something to look up to when you come to the last step, which is the decision making step. You should have some qualitative data so that you can make a decision. So you also need to define that in your hypothesis. Next is brainstorm solutions. And this is probably something that takes most of the time. So you have to interact with other team members, you have to talk to other team members, maybe your manager, maybe the designer or backend, whatever teammates you have, and talk to them and see what problems, how problems can be solved, and come up with the solutions that you want to implement in order to solve the problem that you faced, that you found out. Next step is very obvious. You run the experiment. You split your traffic into two parts. Let's say you have only two variations. If you have more than two variations, you should split your traffic into those many parts. So let's say you have 3 different variations and you want to test which one works better. You can split your traffic into like 30, 33, 33, and 33. And you can see which one performs better. So yeah, just in this step you run the experiment and you actually make your customers look at the content that you want them to look at. Next thing is analyze the results to make a decision. When we talk about that, what exactly are we looking at? We are looking at confidence interval and statistical significance. What that means is how confident you are when you observe something. And that means how confident you are when you see an observation and how confident you are about that observation being not just due to a chance. When we say 95% statistical significance, we know that there is a 5% probability that the observation is just because of pure luck or pure chance. So these are the false positives or false negatives that we talk about. So you have to consider the higher statistical significance your experiment or your test has, the more sure you are that the observation is real and it's not because of any chance. So you always want to increase that, but you cannot practically cannot achieve 100% of statistical significance because there's always going to be some chance which is taking place due to bias or due to different factors. So you either try to keep it like 95, or if you want to go higher, you may want to keep it like 99, so that you have only 1% chance that your observation is just because of chance. So what that means is, when we talk about high statistical confidence, that means there's low risk that something that you observed was just due to chance. So this was about what exactly you can do and how you can do the A/B testing. Once you have the results, how do you make sense of those results? You can segment your data, and how? One way is to segment by source, and what that means is, let's say people are coming to your website or your app from organic search, from let's say they're coming from social media or some other referrals. So you want to be able to segment that, segment the data, because you may be running an experiment which actually means something for those people who are coming from social media, and you don't really want to track those people who are not coming from social media and just coming from directly or from organic search. So you may want to use the segmentation by source, or you can also segment by behavior. There are going to be some users, some customers who are going to be regular on your platform, on your website, on your app, and there are some going to be not very regular. There may be some changes which affect the regular customers more, regular users more. So you want to be able to segment and see how regular users are interacting or behaving after the change, and how the non-regular users are behaving, so that you can actually pinpoint where the problem is or whether you're solving it or not. You may also do it by outcome. So let's say you have one customer which comes to your website. Let's say you have an e-commerce website, and that person ends up making a purchase on your website. It brings you money, good. And then there is another customer which doesn't make a purchase. You want to be able to see the impact, see the data distributed on these bases, so that you decide it by outcome. You see how it affects the people who are actually making a purchase. You may want to see how much time they take to make a purchase. So you want to see who actually made a purchase and how you affected their time taken. Or you may also do it by demographic. You may have a product which is localized to specific markets, and you want to see how that how your changes, how your new feature affects customers or is perceived by customers from a particular region. So what metrics I want? I have been talking about there should be some metric which you can look up to when you have the results, but what are the metrics that you can have? Again, this depends totally on your product, your new features, your vision about your product, and how you make money, or how you want to increase, what exactly you want to increase. You want to increase the conversion or whatever. So it really depends on your product. But let's take some examples as we considered before. Let's say you have a website. You may consider web page views, how your page views are increasing or decreasing. You may consider signups. You may also consider like clicks on your call to action buttons. Let's say you changed it to create account to sign up, or vice versa. You want to see how it affects the click rate, and you can also see the conversion. How much money, how much more money does your change bring, or how much less money it brings. If you have a social network, you can check how many images are uploaded. Does that increase or decrease according to your changes? And what exactly do you want? You want them to increase or decrease? You can check the signups, you can check the active users, or you can also check the session duration, like for how long a session is lasting. If you have emails, you can check the open ratio, you can check the click ratio on whatever call to actions you have, and you can also check the conversion again. Like you can segment by source, and you can see how much of the conversion is coming from the email. If you have mobile, you can check again the push notifications, how many are actually clicked. You can check the clicks on this call to action buttons, and again the conversion. Sometimes it's really about the money. So you have to be really careful how much more money your new feature brings, or how much less money, so that you can actually see the impact on your business. But there's a surprise. There are always more ways to fail than there are to succeed. In ideal world, of course not. So why do experiments fail? What are the reasons why an experiment may fail, and what are the things that you may be careful about when you do A/B testing? First is technical flaws. So you may have a less than ideal implementation, which may lead to increase in page load time. So let me give you an example. So let's say you are making an extra query to show something to your users, a query from the database, and that may lead to increase in load time. And even if your idea is really cool and your feature that you're adding is really cool, if it slows down the page load, your experiment is going to be affected indirectly, and you will not get to know why exactly that happens. So you really need to be careful about what are the side effects, or maybe you have new warnings or new errors on your introduction of the new feature or new changes. So you need to be careful about how your experiment is doing. You need to monitor it carefully so that you can see there are no side effects which are going to affect the user behavior because of those changes. You may also have cross-browser issues. Yes, it's 2017, and there are still some things which behave different on different browsers. So you need to consider, you need to test your product on different browsers so that it looks good to everyone. And you may also have cross-device issues. So everyone is aware of the responsive website, responsive web pages. You need to be testing your product, your changes on all the different devices of different resolutions, so that your customers have a good experience with those new changes and you're not having any side effect which is going to affect your change. You may also be missing the context, and what that means is there something that is less visible because of your new feature? Or maybe you just added it on a wrong spot. You added it in a wrong place, or you added a wrong button, or you added something new in the layout, and it's not at the right place. Or this is a one. So how many times has it happened that you had to remove something to add something new? You need to be considerate about this, because you may be removing something that people like a lot, and that is going to affect your experiment indirectly again. And you're going to see like, okay, people don't like my new change, but it's actually because you removed something useful. So if you want to remove something, you want to first A/B test that, so that you know that how people react to that remove, and then you add something new, so that you actually pinpoint what's the problem. You may also be tracking untargeted audience, and what that means is, do you know whether they are coming from organic search or they are coming directly to your website? Again, the segmentation helps with that. Do you know whether they are returning customers, returning visitors, or the new visitors? Because behavior may be different when someone sees a change. They may like it or they may not like it. But for new users, they don't see a change. There's nothing changed. So you need to be able to segment the results so that you can make sense of it. Did they come from an email campaign? Again, segmentation is going to help you here, because you may be making some changes which are more relevant for people who are coming from emails, clicking on emails and coming to your website or your product. You want to be able to segment the results. And yeah, again, are they your regular customers, or are they just not very regular customers? You want to be able to segment the results so that you can actually see how different types of people perceive your results, perceive your changes. There may also be some timing issues. And when I say timing issues, what that means is your change seasonal? You may be adding some new feature which says something about skiing, snowboarding, but it may not be a season for that a few months later. You need to be considerate about where your customers are. Maybe you are showing something like, hi, it's summertime, and you send an email to your customers, but if those people are in Australia or New Zealand, they are having their winter starting. So you need to be considerate. You need to be really segmenting your results according to your demographics if your change is seasonal, because that may not be suitable for different people in different regions. Are you showing your feature too early? What that means is, let's say you add a new block of information which talks about, let's say your e-commerce website, and you add a new feature which talks about some taxes that you're going to pay at a time of purchase. Are you adding it too early, that people are turning it off and just going away? You need to consider that, so that you actually know, you actually eliminate the timing issues. Or this one is very trivial. The tooltip, is it disappearing too fast because people are not even able to see the information? This one is a really interesting one. So another technical flaw can be low traffic. But how do you know actually how much traffic is enough for your experiment? How do you know that you have enough traffic so that you can make a decision about it? So there is a tool for that by Optimizely, which looks like this. And you don't have to read any text. I will tell you what's important. So let's consider a case. You have some product and you have conversion rate, baseline conversion rate of 3%. If you right now, if you do not do anything, the conversion is 3%. And by A/B testing, you want to be able to measure 20% change. So the minimum detectable effect is 20%. And let's say we want to consider 95% statistical. What that means is you should have 13,000 people in your every variation so that you can actually say that the information, the change, 20% change that you have is actually significant. What about this? The only thing that changed is now you want to measure 2% change. What do you think? Should it be more than 13,000 or less?
More.
Yes, exactly. How more? Do you have any idea? It's 1.9 million. And this comes from directly from mathematics. When we want to detect small change, there is more chance that it's just because of chance. The fluctuations are going to cause small changes, and if you want to be able to measure small change, you have to get more data. You have to get higher sample size so that you can be sure about the changes, about the effects that you have. So let's summarize it and see why tests fail. There may be technical flaws. There may be you may be some missing context. There may be untargeted audience that you are tracking, but your experiment is not really related to that. You may have timing issues like the localization issues, which are like the seasonal things, or the final one, which is like really important for you to make a decision. And that brings me to conclusion. First thing that I want you to take away from this talk is there is no better time to start testing your product than now. So you should really start testing your product and know your customers better. You should not be carried away by your opinions, by your assumptions, by your ideas. Definitely it's good to have ideas, but it's even better to test your ideas on real people so that you know you're not just doing something emotionally, just carried away by emotions or assumptions. You're actually making something that's useful for you and your customers. And learn from your customers and take actions. You give them something, you implement something, you get feedback in terms of how they behave, in terms of data. You do something again to fix that issue or to make another improvement. You get that data, you do that again, and this is a cycle that you should continue doing till the time you are improving or you're working on your product. Thank you for running the talk, and you can get in touch with me on all these links if you want, and I think we have 10 minutes if you have any questions. Yep.
At Booking.com, how many concurrent split tests do you run at once?
I'm not sure I can.
Or do you run multiple split tests on a single page or a single part?
Yes, yes, that's how it works. So, yeah, this is a good question. How do you go about running more than one experiment on the same page? Is that right? Yeah. So let's say you have two things on. Like, let's consider this slide. So if this is my website, this is my web page. If I want to A/B test on this, I want to change, let's say, the thank you text and write something else. And I also want to see change the image and want to see how that affects how many pictures you take when you see that picture. So what you can do is you make that change in the text, the thank you. So you create an experiment, let's say thank you and thanks. So these are two texts that you have. This is one experiment, and at the same time you can also have another experiment for changing the image, let's say image A and image B. And now when you run these two experiments simultaneously, how it works is when you look at the data from your first experiment that has both the variations, image A and image B in it. So if you just consider one thing like text 1, it's going to have both image 1 and image 2. So it's going to neutralize the effect that another experiment is having on your experiment that you are considering. So yes, it's totally safe to run multiple experiments on the same page, but you should consider how much traffic you're getting so that the neutral effect is the effect is of other experiments is neutralized.
Cheers, thanks.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, what's the biggest surprise you got using A/B testing? What is the most surprising finding?
In general, or are you talking about like some particular case?
No, in general, in your experience.
Okay, so I can tell you a story. So we were implementing some new product, and yeah, so we were implementing a new product, and we were thinking like this is really a good way of doing it. But when we tested it, it turned out that it was not how people perceive it. So this is like the key finding, that when you think that when you're developing something, you think about it the way that you want it to. But that's not how people are going to think about it. So that's why, that's the key learning, that you should think, you should definitely think about how people are going to like it, how are you going to interpret it. But it's more important to actually get your customers involved in it and see how they actually behave. Others? Yes?
Do you start and stop split tests when you do app releases, or are you able? Do you start and stop them between app releases? Do you have any mechanisms to?
Yes. Yes. So the question is, when you release something, can you start and stop experiments while doing that, right? It's not advisable to do that, because when you roll out some new feature and you start the experiment at the same time, if there's something going wrong, you're not sure whether it's because of that experiment or because of the new rollout. So it's generally, in general, it's advisable to not start or stop any experiment when you're rolling out something new, so that you can narrow down the effect or narrow down the cause of any error or any warning that you have. Yes?
What's the optimal time frame for conducting an experiment? Is there a too short period, or it depends on the amount of data you get in a short time?
Yeah. So let's say 2 or 3 days is definitely a small time, because if you start an experiment on, let's say, Friday, you have a weekend, and if you run an experiment for only 3 days, it's going to have that time effect. So you always want to have at least 1 full week cycle, so that you can neutralize, you can actually sort of normalize the effect, so, and you can see that the time effect is not there. So you should always have at least 1 full week cycle. Okay, thank you.